I didn't know betrayal could feel like this, like drowning slowly, gasping for air while the ones you trusted the most watch you sink. My husband, Ethan, had been my world, my safe place. And my sister, Clara, had been my best friend, my confidant, the person I thought would protect me from harm. But when they ripped the floor out from beneath me, they didn't just leave me broken, they awakened something inside me. A darkness. A secret that will ruin them both. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of retribution. And it begins with the night everything fell apart. The rain pounded against the roof of our small suburban house, the kind of storm that seeps into your bones and leaves you feeling cold long after it passes. I sat on the couch, my feet tucked under me, waiting for Ethan to come home from work. He was late again. His job at the marketing firm had always been demanding, but lately his hours had stretched beyond reason. I glanced at the clock. 11:42 p.m. I told myself not to overthink it, not to assume the worst. But the pit in my stomach had grown heavier these past few weeks, ever since Clara moved back to town. Clara had always been the prettier one, the charismatic one. Even when we were kids, people would stop and marvel at her bright green eyes and easy smile. But she had a wild side, a recklessness that I tried to tame even as we grew up. I had never resented her for it until recently. The sound of the front door creaking open snapped me out of my thoughts. I sat up, heart racing, as Ethan entered the house, his clothes damp from the rain. He didn't greet me, didn't even look my way. He just shrugged off his jacket and tossed it onto the chair. "You're late," I said, my voice steady but questioning. "Yeah, work ran over," he replied, avoiding my gaze. I stood and walked toward him, trying to bridge the growing distance between us. "You've been working late a lot lately." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I told you it's the new campaign. It's just temporary." But the way he said it, rushed, dismissive, made my chest tighten. I reached out and touched his arm. "Ethan, if something's wrong, you can tell me." For a moment I thought he might break. His eyes softened and I saw a flicker of the man I married, the man who used to pull me into his arms after a long day and make me feel like I was the only person in the world. But just as quickly as it appeared, the softness vanished. "I'm fine, Sarah. You're overthinking things." Overthinking. It was his favorite way to dismiss me, to make me feel like I was imagining problems that didn't exist. But I wasn't imagining the distance between us, or the way he flinched when I touched him. I forced a smile and nodded, pretending to believe him. But that night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering if my marriage was slipping through my fingers. The next day I found the first piece of the puzzle. Ethan had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. I knew it was wrong. I had never snooped through his things before, but something inside me, an instinct I couldn't ignore, told me to look. I unlocked the phone and scrolled through his messages. Most were work-related, but then I saw a conversation with Clara. My breath hitched as I opened it. "Clara, did you tell her yet?" "Ethan, no. She's suspicious, but I'll handle it." "Clara, we can't keep sneaking around. She's going to find out eventually." "Ethan, I'll take care of it. Just trust me." The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the counter. I backed away, the room spinning around me. My mind raced, replaying every interaction between Ethan and Clara over the past few weeks. The way they exchanged glances at family gatherings. The times they disappeared into another room, claiming they needed to talk about something. How long had this been going on? How long had they been lying to me? I pressed a hand to my mouth, stifling a sob. But as the initial shock began to wear off, something else took its place. Anger. Blistering, all-consuming anger. They had betrayed me. And they thought I wouldn't find out. They were wrong. For the next few days I played the role of the oblivious wife. I smiled at Ethan when he came home, asked him about his day, and pretended not to notice the way he avoided eye contact. I even invited Clara over for coffee, masking my contempt with polite conversation. But behind the facade I was plotting. I knew confronting them head-on wouldn't be enough. I wanted them to feel the same pain, the same sense of betrayal that I felt. But more than that, I wanted them to fear me. I started by gathering information. Late at night, while Ethan slept, I scoured through his phone, his emails, anything that could give me leverage. I found hotel reservations under his name, receipts for expensive dinners, and photos of him and Clara that made my blood boil. Then I visited an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years but who owed me a favor. Marcus had always been good with technology and he agreed to help me set up hidden cameras in our house. I wanted proof. Not for the courts, not for a divorce settlement, but for my own satisfaction. It didn't take long for the cameras to capture what I needed. One afternoon while I was supposedly at a spa, Ethan invited Clara over. I watched the footage later that night, my heart pounding as I saw them together in our living room, the same room where Ethan and I had once laughed, celebrated anniversaries, and dreamed of a future together. They didn't just talk. They kissed. They whispered things to each other that made my skin crawl. And when they left the house hand in hand, I knew I had enough. But instead of confronting them, I waited. Because I had something bigger planned. Something they wouldn't see coming. The basement of our house had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could escape, surrounded by books, art supplies, and memories from my past. But over the past few weeks, it had become something else entirely. A shrine to my revenge. Photos of Ethan and Clara were pinned to a corkboard, connected by red strings like a detective's crime scene. Notes and recordings detailed every lie, every betrayal. But the centerpiece was a locked box hidden beneath the floorboards, a box containing the secret that would destroy them both. I had discovered it by accident, buried in my late father's estate papers. A family secret so shocking that it would ruin Clara's life forever. She wasn't who she thought she was. And once Ethan found out, their relationship would crumble. But I wasn't going to reveal it just yet. I needed them to suffer first. The final piece of the puzzle was setting the trap. I sent Ethan and Clara anonymous invitations to a dinner party at a secluded cabin outside of town. The invitations were handwritten with no return address, and hinted at a surprise that would change their lives forever. They wouldn't be able to resist. As I sealed the envelopes and placed them in the mailbox, a sense of calm washed over me. The storm inside me had settled, but it wasn't over. Not yet. Because when they arrived at that cabin, they wouldn't be leaving the same way they came in. The invitation was vague, carefully designed to pique their curiosity. It read, "Join us for an exclusive evening of revelations, memories, and surprises. This night will be one you'll never forget." The location was an isolated cabin I had rented for the night. Its surroundings were dense with trees, the only sound the rustling of leaves and the occasional howl of distant wolves. I had picked the location for its seclusion. No neighbors. No witnesses. I imagined the confusion on their faces when they received the invitations. Ethan hated surprises, and Clara's curiosity would burn until she knew what secrets lay hidden behind that handwritten note. I had counted on their curiosity, it was their weakness. I would be the one to exploit it. The night finally arrived. I arrived at the cabin an hour before they were expected. The interior was dimly lit, with flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. I had arranged the dining table in the center of the room. A long wooden table, covered in a deep red tablecloth that matched the wine I had chilling in the kitchen. Two place settings sat across from each other, but there was no plate for me. I wouldn't be joining them as a guest. No, I had a better role to play, one that required watching from the shadows. In the middle of the table lay a single envelope with a note, for after dinner. Inside it was the truth I had been waiting to reveal, a family secret Clara would never recover from, and a betrayal Ethan would never forgive. But that revelation would come later. First, I needed to break them down emotionally, piece by piece. At exactly 8 p.m., the sound of gravel crunching under tires echoed outside. I peeked through the curtains and saw Ethan's car pulling up, headlights slicing through the dark. My heart pounded, not with fear but with anticipation. Tonight they would learn what it felt like to have their lives crumble. I retreated to the hidden room behind the cabin's fireplace, a small space I had discovered when renting the property. From there I could see everything through a two-way mirror without being seen. I settled in, took a deep breath, and waited for the show to begin. The door creaked open and Clara's laughter filled the cabin. "This place is creepy," she said, her voice light but laced with unease. "Why would someone invite us out here?" Ethan followed her in, scanning the room with a furrowed brow. "I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of joke." They noticed the table, the candles, the wine bottle resting in the center. Clara walked over and picked up the envelope marked for after dinner, but Ethan quickly snatched it from her hands. "Don't open it," he said firmly. "Let's just eat first and see what this is about." Clara rolled her eyes but let him have his way. They sat down and for a moment there was silence. The only sound was the flicker of candle flames and the rain that had started to drizzle against the cabin's roof. I smiled from my hidden vantage point. They were nervous. Good. Ethan poured them both a glass of wine, but his hand shook slightly as he did so. Maybe it's a prank, he said, more to himself than to Clara. Someone messing with us. Clara shrugged and took a sip of wine. If it's a prank, it's a pretty elaborate one. Maybe we should leave, Ethan suggested. No, Clara said firmly, her eyes glinting with curiosity. We're already here. Let's see how it plays out. I had expected that response. Clara's need for control and answers would keep her rooted to that chair until the truth was revealed. That was her fatal flaw. She could never walk away from a mystery, no matter how dangerous it might be. They began eating the dinner I had prepared for them earlier: steak, potatoes, and roasted vegetables. The meal was deliberately overcooked, bland, and dry, but they ate in silence, their discomfort growing with each passing second. I imagined their thoughts swirling, wondering who could have arranged this dinner and why. Halfway through the meal, Clara spoke. Do you think Sarah knows? Ethan tensed, his fork hovering over his plate. What do you mean? Clara leaned forward, lowering her voice as if the walls themselves could hear her. About us. About what we've been doing. What if she's the one behind this? Ethan's face paled and he set his fork down. Sarah doesn't know anything. If she did, she wouldn't have just sent us an invitation, she would have confronted me. Claire didn't look convinced. Maybe she's planning something. Maybe this is her way of getting revenge. A long pause followed and I could practically see the gears turning in Ethan's head. He wanted to believe that everything was fine, that their secret affair hadn't been discovered. But doubt was a powerful thing, and tonight I would feed that doubt until it consumed him. I don't think it's Sarah, Ethan said finally, his voice more confident than he felt. She's not like that. Clara scoffed. You don't know her as well as you think you do. Oh, how right she was. When the meal was finished, Ethan reached for the envelope. His fingers trembled as he opened it and pulled out the letter inside. His eyes scanned the page, and with each line, his expression darkened. Clara, impatient as always, leaned over to read it. What is it? She asked, her voice growing frantic. Ethan didn't answer. He just stared at the words on the page as if they had the power to undo him. I had written the letter carefully, every word designed to strike at their insecurities. Ethan, you think you've won. You think you can betray someone who loved you and get away with it. But you don't know everything. Clara's been keeping secrets from you too. She's not who she says she is. And by the time you finish reading this letter, it'll be too late to undo what you've set in motion. I'll see you both soon. The bottom of the letter was signed with a name neither of them expected: Margaret Hayes. My mother. Clara's face drained of color. This isn't possible. Your mother's dead. Ethan looked at her, his expression shifting from confusion to suspicion. Why would she mention you keeping secrets? What does she mean by that? I don't know. Clara stammered, her voice cracking. She's just trying to mess with us. Ethan didn't believe her. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, in the way his fingers curled into fists. The cracks in their relationship had finally appeared, and now all I had to do was widen them. I need some air, Ethan muttered, standing abruptly and heading for the door. Clara followed him, panic evident in her voice. Ethan, wait. You're not seriously taking this letter to heart, are you? It's a setup. Someone's trying to mess with us. Ethan stopped at the threshold, rain splattering against his shoes as he turned back to face her. What aren't you telling me, Clara? And there it was, the seed of doubt planted and growing rapidly. I smiled as I watched them argue, their voices rising with each accusation. They had no idea that the real secret, the one hidden deep within that letter, was still waiting to be revealed. And when it would destroy them both. The rain pounded harder against the roof, as if the storm outside had been summoned by the chaos inside the cabin. Ethan stood in the doorway, his silhouette illuminated by flashes of lightning. His gaze cut through Clara like a knife, demanding answers. Tell me, he said, his voice low but venomous. What does Sarah's mother mean by you keeping secrets? What have you done? Clara looked like a trapped animal, her wide eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. This is a trick, Ethan. It's exactly what she wants. Don't fall for it. Ethan took a step closer, his wet shoes squeaking against the wooden floor. Clara, I've lied for you. I've risked everything for you. Don't make me regret it. Her breath hitched, and for a moment she didn't answer. I watched from the hidden room, savoring the tension. This was exactly what I had planned, a collision of lies, guilt and fear. The cracks in their relationship had begun to split and now I would shatter them. Clara swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. It's nothing. Just forget the letter. But Ethan wasn't going to let it go. Not now. You think I'm going to forget this? He spat, waving the letter in her face. You've been acting strange for weeks, Clara. You said you loved me, that you wanted a future with me. But if you're keeping things from me, then what the hell am I doing here? Thunder boomed overhead, shaking the cabin's fragile walls. Clara flinched, but her eyes never left Ethan's. It's not what you think, she said, desperation seeping into her voice. I swear. Ethan took another step forward, closing the distance between them. Then tell me what it is. Tell me the truth or I walk out that door and you'll never see me again. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Clara's mind racing, weighing her options. She could try to lie, to spin a story that would keep Ethan by her side. But the fear of being found out had already taken root and I knew she was unraveling. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling. There's something you don't know about Sarah and me. About our family. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Clara took a shaky breath, her gaze darting to the letter still clutched in Ethan's hand. We're not full sisters. My biological father, he wasn't the same as Sarah's. My mother had an affair before she married Sarah's dad. Ethan blinked, the revelation hitting him like a punch to the gut. What? You never told me that. I didn't think it mattered, Clara said quickly. It was years ago. My biological father left before I was even born. Sarah's parents raised me like their own. Ethan shook his head, confusion clouding his features. Then why does this letter make it sound like you're hiding something bigger? Like Sarah's mother knew a secret that could destroy us. Clara's lips trembled and tears welled in her eyes. Because there's more. I leaned closer to the two-way mirror, my pulse quickening. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper, as if saying the words out loud would somehow make them more dangerous. Sarah's father. He wasn't just my stepfather. He was also the man she choked on the words, tears streaming down her face. When I was 18 I had a brief relationship with him. Ethan froze, his face contorting in shock. What? Clara sobbed, her words tumbling out in a rush. It was stupid, okay? I was young and confused. He was kind to me when I felt invisible. I didn't know how to handle it, and by the time I realized how wrong it was too late. Ethan backed away from her as if she were contagious. You slept with Sarah's dad? It was a mistake, she cried. I never meant for it to happen and it ended before anyone found out. But Sarah's mom, Margaret, knew. I think she found out before she died. I clenched my fists in the hidden room, my heart pounding with satisfaction. Clara had finally confessed to the secret I had spent years uncovering. But this wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning of their descent into ruin. Ethan's face twisted in disgust. You lied to me. You've been lying to me this whole time. I didn't want to lose you. Clara sobbed, reaching for him, but he recoiled. Please, Ethan. I love you. I didn't want this to come between us. Ethan laughed bitterly. Come between us? Claire, you've been lying since the day we met. I betrayed my wife for you, left the woman who loved me for this. He staggered back, his gaze darting around the room as if searching for an exit. I need air. No, please don't go. Clara pleaded, but Ethan ignored her, throwing open the door and stepping into the pouring rain. As soon as Ethan disappeared into the night, Clara crumpled to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I watched her for a moment, savoring her despair. She had taken everything from me, my husband, my family, my sense of security. But now she was the one falling apart and I wasn't done yet. I stepped out from the hidden room, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. Clara's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face twisting in confusion and fear as she saw me standing there. Sarah? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Surprised to see me? Clara scrambled to her feet, wiping her face with trembling hands. How long have you been here? Long enough, I said, my voice cold. Long enough to hear every pathetic word. She backed away, her eyes darting toward the door as if she was considering making a run for it. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for any of this. I stepped closer, my presence suffocating her escape routes. You didn't mean to sleep with my husband? Or with my father? Clara's lips trembled, but she didn't respond. You've taken everything from me, I said, my voice growing darker. And now, I'm going to take everything from you. Her eyes widened in terror. What are you going to do? I pulled a small vial from my pocket, a vial containing the last remnants of the secret ingredient I had slipped into the wine earlier. You've been poisoned, Clara. Her breath hitched and she clutched her stomach, the reality of her situation sinking in. No. You're lying. I tilted my head, watching as panic spread across her face. I wouldn't lie about this. You'll feel it soon. Your muscles will start to weaken and then your heart will slow. Clara collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, Sarah. Don't do this. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you betrayed me, I whispered. Her sobs echoed through the cabin, mixing with the sound of rain and distant thunder. I watched her for a moment, relishing the power I held over her. But I wasn't done. I had one final revelation to deliver. I didn't just poison you, I said, kneeling beside her. I left something for Ethan too. By the time he comes back, he'll find everything, the videos, the recordings of your confessions, and the truth about your affair with my father. Clara's sobs grew louder. You can't do this. Please. I leaned in, my lips inches from her ear. I already have. With that, I stood and walked toward the door, leaving her to drown in her misery. I stepped outside into the storm, the rain washing away the last remnants of my hesitation. I had won. But this wasn't the end. The real horror had only just begun. The rain soaked me to the bone as I stepped outside the cabin, the storm raging around me like nature itself was celebrating the chaos I had unleashed. Lightning flashed across the sky, casting eerie shadows on the forested path ahead. I could barely see Ethan through the downpour, but I knew where he was headed, toward the car parked a few yards away. Toward escape. But there was no escaping this. Not tonight. I didn't follow him immediately. I needed him to sit in the car to wrestle with the weight of Clara's betrayal. He thought he had seen it all, the lies, the secrets, the infidelity. But he hadn't yet faced the final piece of my plan. I had made sure of that. With a calm breath, I pulled the hood of my coat over my head and walked slowly toward the car, my footsteps muffled by the rain-soaked ground. Ethan was leaning against the driver's side door, his hands buried in his wet hair, his shoulders heaving with silent sobs. For a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. But the memory of his betrayal snapped me out of it. He had left me. For her. And now he was drowning in the consequences of his own choices. I stepped closer, my voice cutting through the rain like a knife. Looking for an exit? Ethan spun around, startled, his eyes wide with shock. His face was pale, his wet clothes clinging to him like a second skin. Sarah, he breathed as if he hadn't expected to see me alive. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that masked the storm raging inside me. Surprised to see me? He wiped the rain from his face, struggling to regain composure. What are you doing here? How did you? I invited you, I interrupted, my tone calm but laced with venom. Didn't you get the message? Ethan's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking between me and the cabin. What do you want, Sarah? Why are you doing this? I took a step closer, the rain drenching my hair and running down my face like tears I refused to shed. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. To have the people you love betray you so deeply that it destroys who you are. He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. You didn't just cheat on me, Ethan. You tore apart my life. You made me question my worth, my sanity. And for what? For her. He looked away, guilt and shame etched into his features. I made a mistake. I know that. A mistake. I repeated, laughing bitterly. You didn't accidentally fall into her bed, Ethan. You made a choice. Over and over again. Lightning illuminated his face, highlighting the cracks in his resolve. I didn't know how to stop, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I thought she could give me something you couldn't. And did she? I asked, stepping closer until I was inches away from him. Did she give you what you wanted? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence spoke volumes. I took another step back, my eyes locked on his. Go back inside. There's something you need to see. Ethan hesitated, but something in my gaze must have convinced him. He nodded slowly and followed me back to the cabin, the storm raging around us like an omen of what was to come. When we entered, Clara was still on the floor, her sobs reduced to quiet whimpers. She looked up when we walked in, her eyes bloodshot and swollen. "Ethan," she croaked, reaching for him. "Please." He stepped around her, ignoring her outstretched hand. "What's this about, Sarah? What else do you want me to see?" I led him to the dining table where I had placed the final piece of my plan, a laptop. The screen glowed softly in the dim light, waiting for him to press play. My finger hovered over the keyboard as I looked at him one last time. "This is everything you need to know," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Everything she didn't tell you." He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed the spacebar. The video began with a shaky, grainy clip of Clara sneaking into a motel room. The timestamp in the corner showed it was from 2 years ago, long before Ethan and I had started having problems in our marriage. She wasn't meeting Ethan in the video though. She was meeting another man. Someone I had recognized as one of our family friends, a man married with children of his own. Ethan's breath hitched as the video continued, showing Clara laughing, kissing, and eventually undressing the man. I had collected hours of footage, enough to destroy her reputation entirely. But that wasn't the worst of it. The next clip was audio, a conversation between Clara and that same man, recorded without her knowledge. Her voice was filled with contempt as she talked about Ethan. "He's just a means to an end," she said coldly. "Once Sarah's out of the picture, I'll have him wrapped around my finger. He's desperate for attention, so I give him what he wants. But he's not my endgame. I need him to get access to the money Sarah inherited from her mother." Ethan staggered back as if he had been punched in the gut. His hands trembled and his breath came in short, ragged gasps. "No. No, this can't be true." I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "It's all true, Ethan. She didn't love you. She used you." Clara sobbed harder, crawling toward him on her knees. "Ethan, please. I didn't mean it. I was just—" "Shut up," he roared, his face contorted with rage. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. "Why are you doing this, Sarah? Why didn't you just leave me?" "Because leaving wouldn't have been enough," I said, my voice chillingly soft. "I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to know what it feels like to be betrayed by the person you trusted most." Ethan's chest rose and fell rapidly, his mind struggling to process everything. He looked at Clara, the woman he had destroyed our marriage for, and saw her for who she truly was, a liar, a manipulator. The woman he had thought would give him everything had taken everything instead. Clara clutched her stomach, her breathing shallow. The poison was working faster now, weakening her muscles and slowing her heartbeat. "Please," she whimpered, looking at me. "Don't let me die." Ethan's gaze snapped toward her, panic replacing his anger. "What did you do to her?" he demanded. "I gave her what she deserved," I said simply. He rushed to Clara's side, cradling her trembling body in his arms. "We need to get her to a hospital." "She won't make it in time," I said, watching as realization dawned on his face. "You can try, but the storm will slow you down. By the time you get there, she'll be gone." "No," Ethan whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You can't do this." I stood silently, watching him break. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when both of them realized they had lost everything. But as I turned toward the door, ready to leave them to their fate, Ethan's voice stopped me. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. "Please. Don't leave me." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. For a brief moment I considered turning back, offering him a lifeline. But then I remembered the nights I had spent crying alone, the humiliation of knowing my husband had chosen my sister over me. I opened the door and stepped into the storm, the sound of their sobs fading into the night. I didn't need to see what happened next. I already knew how this story would end. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. I drove through the rain, the windshield wipers working furiously to keep the road visible. The storm had lessened slightly, but the chaos inside my mind was far from over. My hands trembled against the steering wheel, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I should have felt victorious. I had orchestrated their downfall, exposed their lies, and left them shattered. But as I navigated the winding road back to town, an emptiness settled in my chest. I reminded myself why I had done it, to make them suffer like they had made me suffer. But revenge, as intoxicating as it had been, left behind an aftertaste of bitterness. A part of me wanted to turn back to see if Ethan was still cradling Clara's dying body in that cabin, tears mixing with the rain as he begged her to survive. But I knew better. My job was done and the next part of the plan was already in motion. I wasn't finished with them yet. There was still one final act to play. The storm had passed by the time the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon. I sat at my kitchen table sipping coffee and staring out the window. The world outside was deceptively calm, as if the storm had never happened. But I knew that somewhere out there Ethan and Clara's lives were unraveling. At exactly 8 a.m. my phone buzzed. I picked it up, my heart racing as I read the message from an unknown number. "They've been found." I smiled to myself and deleted the message. Marcus, my old friend and the tech genius who had helped me install the hidden cameras, had kept his end of the bargain. He had been waiting outside the cabin, hidden in the woods, until he saw the aftermath of my plan. He had called emergency services, ensuring that Ethan and Clara would be rescued, just in time for the chaos to spread. Now all I had to do was wait. By noon the local news was buzzing with the story. Local woman hospitalized after mysterious incident at secluded cabin. Prominent couple's affair exposed in shocking video footage. I turned on the television, watching as a reporter stood outside the hospital, delivering the story with breathless urgency. Clara Hayes was rushed to Everlake General Hospital early this morning after a suspected poisoning incident at a remote cabin, the reporter said. Authorities have confirmed that her condition is critical but stable. Meanwhile, leaked footage of an affair between Clara and a married man has surfaced online, sparking widespread scandal. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. The footage wasn't just any random clip. It was the compilation of videos and audio recordings I had carefully curated, the ones that exposed not only their affair but also Clara's manipulation and deceit. I had uploaded the files anonymously to multiple platforms, ensuring they would spread like wildfire. Ethan's face flashed on the screen next, a candid shot taken during one of our happier days. The reporter continued, "Ethan Walker, Clara's married lover, was also at the scene and is reportedly cooperating with authorities. The exact circumstances of the incident remain unclear, but sources suggest that a family dispute may have escalated." A family dispute. I chuckled darkly. They had no idea how deep the wounds went. Later that afternoon there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Ethan stood on the porch, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled and damp. He looked like a man on the edge of collapse. For a brief moment I considered slamming the door in his face, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood in the living room, his gaze darting around as if he were seeing the house for the first time. His eyes finally landed on me, and the weight of his stare made my chest tighten. "Clara's in the hospital," he said, his voice hoarse. "I know," I replied, my tone emotionless. "She almost died," he continued, his voice cracking. "They said she was poisoned. You did this." I didn't deny it. I did what needed to be done. His fists clenched at his sides. "You could have killed her. But I didn't. I gave her just enough to make her suffer," I said, my gaze unwavering. "Just like you made me suffer." Ethan's breath hitched, and for a moment, I saw the guilt and regret consuming him. But then anger took over, burning away any trace of remorse. "You destroyed everything." I laughed bitterly. "No, Ethan. You destroyed everything. You betrayed me. You lied to me. All I did was return the favor." He took a step closer, his voice low and dangerous. "What do you want from me, Sarah? Is this about revenge? Do you want me to beg for forgiveness?" "I don't want your forgiveness," I said sharply. "I want you to live with the consequences of what you've done. I want you to wake up every day knowing that you ruined your life and hers." He fell silent, his shoulders slumping as the weight of my words sank in. For the first time he looked truly defeated. "I loved you once," he whispered. The words stung more than I expected, but I didn't let it show. "You should have remembered that before you threw it all away." Ethan looked down at the floor, his breath coming in shallow gasps. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "I don't know what to do now." I walked past him, opening the door. The cold afternoon air rushed in, making him shiver. "That's not my problem anymore." He stared at me for a moment as if hoping I would change my mind, but I didn't. Without another word he stepped outside and I closed the door behind him. That night I visited Clara in the hospital. She was lying in the sterile white bed, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily, keeping her alive. Her face was pale, her lips cracked, but her eyes flickered open when she heard me enter. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice weak. I pulled up a chair and sat beside her, the hum of the machines filling the silence between us. "You don't get to play the victim," I said softly. "You did this to yourself." She blinked slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry." I leaned forward, my gaze piercing hers. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." Her sobs filled the room, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No forgiveness. Just the cold satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. I stood and walked toward the door, pausing only briefly to deliver my final words. "Goodbye, Claire. I hope it was worth it." Weeks passed and the scandal continued to spread. Clara's reputation was ruined. Ethan lost his job, his friends, and his dignity. The house we had once shared was put up for sale, its walls stained with memories neither of us wanted. As for me, I didn't rebuild. I didn't try to find closure or move on. I simply let the silence consume me. Because in the end, revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just leaves you with new scars. But at least for the first time in a long while I was finally free.